In the hushed, hallowed expanse of the cosmos, where the celestial bodies pirouette in their eternal, silent ballet, there exists a solitude so profound, so achingly vast, that it defies the comprehension of mortal minds. It is a solitude that transcends the mere absence of companionship, a loneliness that is not born of the void, but of the overwhelming presence of something far greater, far more terrifying, and far more beautiful than the sum of all human understanding. This is the solitude of the chosen one, a being singled out by the divine, marked by an invisible, indelible seal that sets them apart from the teeming masses, yet binds them to an existence of unparalleled isolation. The chosen one, let us call them Elias, for that is the name whispered in the rustling leaves of the sacred groves, and etched into the very fabric of the universe, is not born, but forged in the crucible of divine will. Their story begins not with the first breath of life, but with the first spark of awareness, a consciousness that burns with the intensity of 1,000 suns, illuminating the dark recesses of their soul with a light that is both a blessing and a curse. Elias is not like other children, for they are not of this world. They are a vessel, a conduit, through which the divine flows a bridge between the mortal and the eternal. Elias's earliest memories are not of a crib or a nursery, but of a vast, shimmering expanse, a realm of pure, unadulterated light and love. It is a place of indescribable beauty, where the very air hums with the harmonies of the celestial choir, and the scent of divine grace is as sweet as the first breath of spring. Here, Elias is cradled in the arms of the divine, a being of such radiant glory that to gaze upon them is to be forever changed. The divine speaks to Elias in a language that is not of this world, a language of love and light and infinite possibility. They speak of a purpose, a destiny that only Elias can fulfill, a task that will shape the very course of human history. But as suddenly as it began, the vision ends, and Elias finds themselves alone adrift in the vast, indifferent sea of the mortal world. The transition is not a gentle one, for the divine realm is a place of perfection, and the mortal world is a place of chaos, a pain of suffering. Elias is ill-equipped to navigate this new reality, for they have been raised in a world of love and light, and the darkness of the mortal realm is a shock to their system, a trauma that leaves them reeling, disoriented, and utterly alone. The first thing Elias notices is the silence. It is a silence that is not the absence of sound, but the absence of meaning, a silence that is deafening in its emptiness. The divine realm is a place of constant communication, of ceaseless dialogue between the souls that inhabit it, but the mortal world is a place of isolation, of disconnection, of souls adrift in a sea of their own making, unable to reach out, unable to connect, unable to find the meaning that they so desperately crave. Elias's second realization is the pain. It is a pain that is not physical, but emotional, a pain that is born of the knowledge that they are different, that they are set apart, that they are alone in a way that no other soul can understand. It is a pain that is both a blessing and a curse, for it is a pain that is born of the divine, a pain that is a testament to the love and the light that Elias carries within them. But it is also a pain that is a constant reminder of their isolation, a pain that is a constant source of suffering, a pain that is a constant test of their faith. As Elias grows, they become increasingly aware of the gulf that separates them from their fellow humans. They see the world through eyes that have beheld the divine, and the mortal realm is a pale imitation of the perfection that they have known. They hear the words of their fellow humans, and they are a cacophony of noise, a meaningless jumble of sounds that lack the harmony of the celestial choir. They feel the touch of their fellow humans, and it is a cold, empty thing, a hollow echo of the love and the light that they have known in the divine realm. Elias's isolation is not just a physical thing, but a spiritual one. They are a being of light in a world of darkness, a being of love in a world of hate, a being of hope in a world of despair. They are a beacon of divine grace in a world that has turned its back on the divine, a world that has embraced the darkness, a world that has forgotten the light. And so Elias is alone, not just in their isolation, but in their purpose, in their destiny, in their very existence. But Elias is not without hope, for they carry within them the memory of the divine, the knowledge that they are not alone, that they are not abandoned, that they are not forgotten. They carry within them the love and the light of the divine realm, a love and a light that is a constant source of comfort, a constant source of strength, a constant source of guidance. And so Elias presses on, navigating the treacherous waters of the mortal world, guided by the divine light that burns within them, driven by the divine purpose that has been bestowed upon them. But the path is not an easy one, for the mortal world is a place of temptation, a place of sin, a place of darkness. Elias is constantly tested, constantly challenged, constantly drawn towards the darkness, towards the sin, towards the temptation. They are a being of light, but they are also a being of flesh and blood, a being of emotion and desire, a being that is susceptible to the weaknesses of the mortal world. And so, Elias stumbles, Elias falls, Elias fails. But each time they fall, they rise again. Each time they fail, they try again. Each time they stumble, they press on, guided by the divine light that burns within them, driven by the divine purpose that has been bestowed upon them. And so Elias's journey begins, a journey that will take them to the darkest depths of the mortal world, a journey that will test them, that will challenge them, that will push them to the very limits of their endurance. But it is a journey that they must undertake, for they are the chosen one, the vessel of the divine, the bridge between the mortal and the eternal. And they carry within them a message that must be heard, a message that must be understood, a message that will change the course of human history. But that message is not for the faint of heart, for it is a message of truth, a message of love, a message of light. It is a message that will challenge the very foundations of human belief, a message that will shake the mortal world to its core, a message that will force humanity to confront the darkness within themselves, to embrace the light that they have so long denied. And so Elias's journey is not just a journey of self-discovery, not just a journey of purpose, not just a journey of destiny. It is a journey of revelation, a journey of enlightenment, a journey of divine intervention. And as Elias stands on the precipice of their journey, as they gaze out at the vast, indifferent expanse of the mortal world, they are filled with a sense of dread, a sense of foreboding, a sense of the immense responsibility that has been placed upon their shoulders. But they are also filled with a sense of hope, a sense of purpose, a sense of the divine love and light that burns within them, that guides them, that sustains them. And so, with a deep breath, with a steady heart, with a soul that is both terrified and exhilarated, Elias takes the first step on their journey, a journey that will change the course of human history, a journey that will shape the very fabric of the universe, a journey that will reveal the real reason that they are alone. In the quietude of her dimly lit chamber, the weight of the parchment in her hands felt as heavy as the words inscribed upon it. The fire in the hearth crackled and popped, casting dancing shadows that flickered across the stone walls, but the chill that had settled in Alara's bones seemed impervious to the warmth. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps, as if her body was struggling to comprehend the enormity of the message she had just read. The parchment, delivered by a hooded figure who had vanished into the night as swiftly as he had appeared, bore the seal of the high priestess. The wax, a deep crimson, had been imprinted with the image of a serpent coiled around a chalice, the sacred symbol of their order. Alara's fingers trembled as she traced the intricate design, her mind racing with the implications of the message it contained. The words written in the elegant, looping script of the high priestess were both a summons and a warning. Alara was to present herself at the temple of the divine serpent at the next full moon, where she would receive the revelation that would guide her through the trials that lay ahead, the trials that would determine her fate and the fate of the realm. But it was the final line of the message that had sent a shiver of dread coursing through Alara's veins. Beware the shadows that lurk in the corners of your heart, for they are the true enemies of the light. The words seemed to writhe and twist before her eyes, their meaning as elusive and slippery as the shadows they spoke of. Ilara's heart pounded in her chest, a wild, frantic rhythm that echoed the tumult of her thoughts. She could feel the weight of the world pressing down upon her, the responsibility of her destiny threatening to crush her beneath its immense burden. She had always known that she was different, that she had been chosen for a purpose greater than herself. But the reality of that purpose, the true extent of her role in the grand tapestry of fate, was only now beginning to dawn on her. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing, to calm the storm of emotions that raged within her. The scent of the parchment, a faint, musty aroma that spoke of ancient secrets and forgotten wisdom, filled her nostrils, grounding her in the present moment. She could feel the rough texture of the paper beneath her fingertips, the slight give of the fibers as she pressed her fingers against it. As she opened her eyes, she found herself drawn to the fire, its flickering flames, a mesmerizing dance of light and shadow. She could feel the heat radiating from it, a stark contrast to the cold that had settled in her bones. She reached out a hand, letting the warmth wash over her, the flames casting eerie, elongated shadows that seemed to reach out and beckon her closer. In the heart of the fire, she saw images that seemed to dance and shift before her eyes. She saw the temple of the divine serpent, its towering spires reaching up towards the heavens, the sacred serpent coiled around the chalice that sat atop its highest point. She saw the high priestess, her face a mask of serenity, her eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed to span the ages. And she saw herself standing before the altar, the weight of the world resting upon her shoulders. But there were other images too darker and more sinister. She saw shadows that seemed to writhe and twist their forms, shifting and changing like the flames that danced before her. She saw figures that lurked in the corners of her vision, their faces hidden in the darkness, their intentions as elusive as the shadows they inhabited. And she saw herself standing alone in the heart of a storm, the wind and rain lashing at her, the thunder and lightning tearing at the very fabric of her being. A sob escaped her lips, a raw, primal sound that seemed to tear itself from the very depths of her soul. She felt a tear trace a hot, wet path down her cheek, followed by another and another, until she was overcome with a torrent of emotion that she could no longer contain. She fell to her knees, her body racked with sobs, the parchment slipping from her fingers and fluttering to the ground. She was alone, so utterly alone in a way that she had never been before. The weight of her destiny, the enormity of her purpose had isolated her from the world, had cut her off from the people she loved, from the life she had known. She could feel the walls of her chamber closing in around her, the very air seeming to press down upon her, suffocating her with its oppressive weight. But even as she succumbed to the darkness, even as she allowed the shadows to consume her, she could feel a spark of defiance burning within her. A spark that refused to be extinguished, that refused to be bowed beneath the weight of her fate. She was Alara, the chosen one, the one who had been chosen to stand against the darkness, to bring light to a world that had known only shadow. And she would not fail. With a deep, shuddering breath, she wiped the tears from her eyes and stood her resolve hardening like steel within her. She would go to the temple of the divine serpent, would stand before the high priestess and receive the revelation that was her birthright. and she would face the trials that lay ahead, would confront the shadows that lurked in the corners of her heart and emerge victorious. For she was Alara, the chosen one, and she would not be bowed. She would not be broken. She would stand and she would fight, and she would bring light to a world that had known only darkness. And so, with a final lingering glance at the fire, she turned and left her chamber, her heart heavy with the weight of her destiny, but her spirit unbroken, her resolve unwavering. The path that lay before her was shrouded in darkness, the trials that awaited her unknown and terrifying. But she would face them, would confront them head on, and emerge victorious. For she was Alara, the chosen one, and she would not be bowed. She would not be broken. She would stand, and she would fight, and she would bring light to a world that had known only darkness. The room was a symphony of silence, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words. The chosen one? Elias stood frozen, his heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The message etched in golden letters on the ancient parchment seemed to burn into his retinas, searing his soul with its stark revelation. The real reason you are alone is that you have not yet found the courage to love yourself. The words echoed in his mind, a haunting refrain that sent shivers down his spine. Elias could feel the cold seeping through the stone floor, chilling his bare feet. The scent of aged parchment and dust filled his nostrils, a familiar comfort in the face of such a profound revelation. His breath hitched as he reached out his fingers, trembling as they traced the words on the page. The paper was rough under his touch, the edges worn and brittle with age. It was as if the very essence of time had been captured in this single, life-altering message. A single tear escaped the corner of his eye, tracing a hot path down his cheek. He could taste the saltiness on his lips, a bitter reminder of the loneliness that had been his constant companion. The fire in the hearth crackled and popped, casting flickering shadows on the walls, dancing macabrely in the dim light. The warmth did little to dispel the chill that had settled in his bones. Elias thought back to his childhood, to the countless nights spent huddled in the corner of his room, listening to the whispers of the wind through the trees. He had always felt different, set apart from the other children. Their laughter had been a foreign language, their games a mystery he could never hope to understand. He had attributed his loneliness to his peculiar gifts, to the strange visions that had plagued him since birth. But now he saw the truth with a clarity that was both beautiful and terrifying. The weight of his solitude pressed down on him, a physical force that made it difficult to breathe. He sank to his knees, the cold stone floor, a stark contrast to the warmth of his tears. The parchment slipped from his fingers, fluttering to the ground like a wounded bird. He could feel the tears streaming down his face, now hot and unchecked. Each sob racked his body, shaking him to his very core. In the midst of his despair, a memory surfaced, a fragment of a dream, long forgotten. He saw himself as a child, standing before a mirror, his small hands pressed against the glass. The reflection that stared back at him was not his own, but that of a stranger. A voice, soft and gentle, whispered in his ear, "You are not alone, Elias. You are simply waiting for the courage to love yourself." The memory was like a balm to his wounded soul, a beacon of hope in the darkness. He took a deep, shuddering breath, the air filling his lungs like a lifeline. He reached out his fingers, brushing against the parchment once more. The words seemed to glow with a newfound intensity, their message a promise rather than a condemnation. Elias stood, his body trembling with a newfound resolve. He could feel the power of the message coursing through his veins, a fire that burned away the chill of his loneliness. He knew that the path before him would not be easy, that the journey to self-love was fraught with peril and uncertainty. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, guiding him, supporting him. He turned towards the door, his steps steady and sure. The firelight cast long shadows on the walls, a testament to the journey that lay ahead. He could feel the weight of his solitude lifting, replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. The air was filled with the scent of possibility, a sweet perfume that promised a brighter tomorrow. As he stepped out into the night, the stars above seemed to shine with a newfound brilliance. The wind whispered through the trees, a gentle caress that spoke of love and acceptance. Elias took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. He could feel the power of the message within him, a beacon of light that would guide him on his journey. He knew that the path before him would be long and arduous, that there would be times when he would stumble and fall. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. And with that knowledge, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The night was alive with the sounds of nature, the rustling of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft murmur of a nearby stream. Elias could feel the earth beneath his feet, a solid and steady presence that grounded him in the present moment. He could taste the sweetness of the night air, a promise of the love that awaited him. As he walked, he thought back to the message, to the words that had changed his life forever. The real reason you are alone is that you have not yet found the courage to love yourself. The words were a mantra, a guiding light that would illuminate his path. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. He thought of the times he had judged himself harshly, the times he had berated himself for his perceived failures. He thought of the times he had compared himself to others, measuring his worth against their achievements. He saw now that these were the very things that had kept him from loving himself, that had kept him trapped in a cycle of loneliness and despair. He made a promise to himself, a vow to treat himself with kindness and compassion. He vowed to embrace his imperfections, to celebrate his unique gifts and talents. He vowed to let go of the need for external validation, to find his worth within himself. He vowed to love himself unconditionally and completely. As he walked, he could feel the power of his vow, a force that filled him with a sense of peace and contentment. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, that there would be times when he would falter and stumble. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. He thought of the people he had met on his journey, the friends and allies who had stood by him in his darkest hours. He thought of the enemies he had faced, the challenges he had overcome. He saw now that each of these experiences had shaped him, had molded him into the person he was today. He saw that each of these experiences had been a stepping stone on his journey to self-love. He thought of the future, of the possibilities that lay ahead. He saw himself standing before a mirror, his hands pressed against the glass. But this time, the reflection that stared back at him was his own, a testament to the love and acceptance he had found within himself. He saw himself surrounded by friends and loved ones, their laughter a symphony of joy and happiness. He saw himself standing tall and proud, a beacon of light and love in a world that so desperately needed it. He knew that this vision was not a fantasy, not a pipe dream that would never come to pass. He knew that it was a promise, a guarantee of the love and happiness that awaited him. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. And he knew that he was ready to embark on that journey, to embrace the love and happiness that awaited him. As he walked, he could feel the power of his resolve, a force that filled him with a sense of purpose and determination. He knew that the path before him would be long and arduous, that there would be times when he would stumble and fall. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. He thought of the message, of the words that had changed his life forever. The real reason you are alone is that you have not yet found the courage to love yourself. The words were a mantra, a guiding light that would illuminate his path. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. He thought of the times he had judged himself harshly, the times he had berated himself for his perceived failures. He thought of the times he had compared himself to others, measuring his worth against their achievements. He saw now that these were the very things that had kept him from loving himself, that had kept him trapped in a cycle of loneliness and despair. He made a promise to himself, a vow to treat himself with kindness and compassion. He vowed to embrace his imperfections, to celebrate his unique gifts and talents. He vowed to let go of the need for external validation, to find his worth within himself. He vowed to love himself unconditionally and completely. As he walked, he could feel the power of his vow, a force that filled him with a sense of peace and contentment. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, that there would be times when he would falter and stumble. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. He thought of the people he had met on his journey, the friends and allies who had stood by him in his darkest hours. He thought of the enemies he had faced, the challenges he had overcome. He saw now that each of these experiences had shaped him, had molded him into the person he was today. He saw that each of these experiences had been a stepping stone on his journey to self-love. He thought of the future, of the possibilities that lay ahead. He saw himself standing before a mirror, his hands pressed against the glass. But this time, the reflection that stared back at him was his own, a testament to the love and acceptance he had found within himself. He saw himself surrounded by friends and loved ones, their laughter a symphony of joy and happiness. He saw himself standing tall and proud, a beacon of light and love in a world that so desperately needed it. He knew that this vision was not a fantasy, not a pipe dream that would never come to pass. He knew that it was a promise, a guarantee of the love and happiness that awaited him. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. And he knew that he was ready to embark on that journey, to embrace the love and happiness that awaited him. As he walked, he could feel the power of his resolve, a force that filled him with a sense of purpose and determination. He knew that the path before him would be long and arduous, that there would be times when he would stumble and fall. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. He thought of the message, of the words that had changed his life forever. The real reason you are alone is that you have not yet found the courage to love yourself. The words were a mantra, a guiding light that would illuminate his path. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. He thought of the times he had judged himself harshly, the times he had berated himself for his perceived failures. He thought of the times he had compared himself to others, measuring his worth against their achievements. He saw now that these were the very things that had kept him from loving himself, that had kept him trapped in a cycle of loneliness and despair. He made a promise to himself, a vow to treat himself with kindness and compassion. He vowed to embrace his imperfections, to celebrate his unique gifts and talents. He vowed to let go of the need for external validation, to find his worth within himself. He vowed to love himself unconditionally and completely. As he walked, he could feel the power of his vow, a force that filled him with a sense of peace and contentment. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, that there would be times when he would falter and stumble. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. He thought of the people he had met on his journey, the friends and allies who had stood by him in his darkest hours. He thought of the enemies he had faced, the challenges he had overcome. He saw now that each of these experiences had shaped him, had molded him into the person he was today. He saw that each of these experiences had been a stepping stone on his journey to self-love. He thought of the future, of the possibilities that lay ahead. He saw himself standing before a mirror, his hands pressed against the glass. But this time, the reflection that stared back at him was his own, a testament to the love and acceptance he had found within himself. He saw himself surrounded by friends and loved ones, their laughter a symphony of joy and happiness. He saw himself standing tall and proud, a beacon of light and love in a world that so desperately needed it. He knew that this vision was not a fantasy, not a pipe dream that would never come to pass. He knew that it was a promise, a guarantee of the love and happiness that awaited him. He knew that the journey to self-love was not a destination, but a process, a journey of discovery and growth. And he knew that he was ready to embark on that journey, to embrace the love and happiness that awaited him. As he walked, he could feel the power of his resolve, a force that filled him with a sense of purpose and determination. He knew that the path before him would be long and arduous, that there would be times when he would stumble and fall. But he also knew that he was no longer alone, that the very essence of the universe was with him, supporting him, loving him. The weight of the message pressed down on Elias like a physical force, each word a stone upon his chest. The room, once filled with the soft hum of the computer and the gentle glow of the screen, now felt oppressive, the air thick and heavy. His heart pounded in his ears, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out all other sounds. The words on the screen blurred before his eyes, the stark black letters swimming in a sea of white, their meaning sinking in like a slow, insidious poison. He could feel the blood drain from his face, his skin growing cold and clammy. A shiver ran down his spine, not from the chill in the air, but from the icy tendrils of fear that coiled around his heart. His breath hitched in his throat, each inhale a struggle, each exhale a whisper of disbelief. The message was clear, its intent unmistakable, and yet his mind rebelled against it, refusing to fully comprehend the gravity of the words. Elias's fingers trembled as he reached out, hovering over the keyboard. The plastic keys felt alien under his touch, their familiar layout now foreign and unsettling. He wanted to type a response, to demand answers, to scream into the void for clarification. But his hands refused to obey, frozen in midair, paralyzed by the weight of the revelation. The room seemed to spin around him, the walls closing in the ceiling, pressing down. He could feel the panic rising, a wild beast clawing its way up from the depths of his soul. His vision tunneled the edges of his sight, darkening the screen, the only beacon in the encroaching blackness. He blinked rapidly, trying to dispel the encroaching darkness, trying to ground himself in reality. The scent of the room, usually a comforting blend of old books and warm wood, now seemed stale and suffocating. The leather of his chair, once a comforting embrace, now felt scratchy and abrasive against his skin. The taste of bile rose in his throat, a bitter reminder of the fear that gripped him. He swallowed hard, fighting the urge to retch, fighting to maintain control. Elias's mind raced a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. He thought of his life, of the choices he had made, of the path that had led him here. He thought of the loneliness, of the emptiness that had gnawed at him for so long, of the void that he had tried so desperately to fill. And now, here was the answer, staring him in the face, a cruel joke, played by a capricious God. He thought of the people in his life, of the friends he had pushed away, of the family he had distanced himself from. He thought of the love he had spurned, of the connections he had severed, all in the pursuit of something greater, something more. And now he was alone, truly alone, the weight of his choices pressing down on him like a millstone. A sob rose in his throat, a raw, primal sound that tore at his chest. He clapped a hand over his mouth, stifling the cry, his eyes burning with unshed tears. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried, the last time he had allowed himself to be so vulnerable. But now, the tears came unbidden, a torrent of emotion that he could no longer contain. He let his head fall into his hands, his shoulders shaking with the force of his sobs. The screen in front of him blurred the words, running together, their meaning lost in the haze of his tears. He felt a profound sense of loss, of grief, of a future that would never be. He had been chosen, yes, but the price of that choice was a loneliness that he could never have imagined. As the tears subsided, LS took a deep, shuddering breath, his chest heaving with the effort. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his skin feeling raw and tender. He looked around the room, his gaze falling on the books that lined the walls, the mementos that adorned the shelves. Each one a memory, each one a testament to a life lived in pursuit of something more. He thought of the stories he had written, of the characters he had created, of the worlds he had built. He had always seen himself as a creator, as a weaver of tales, as a bringer of light in a dark world. But now he saw the truth. He was a destroyer, a bringer of pain, a harbinger of loneliness. He had been chosen, yes, but for what purpose? To bring suffering, to bring despair, to bring a loneliness that would consume him. Elias stood up his chair, scraping against the wooden floor with a harsh grating sound. He paced the room, his steps quick and jerky, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts. He felt a restless energy, a need to move, to do something, anything to escape the confines of his own mind. He ran his fingers through his hair, the strands tangling and knotting under his touch. He stopped in front of the window, his gaze falling on the world outside. The street was quiet, the night air still, the stars shining brightly in the sky. It was a peaceful scene, a world untouched by the turmoil that raged within him. He felt a pang of envy, a longing for the simplicity of that world, for the ignorance of its inhabitants. He turned away from the window, his gaze falling on the computer screen. The message was still there, its words a stark reminder of his reality. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he knew he had to do. He sat down at the desk, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He had to respond, had to acknowledge the message, had to face the truth of his situation. His fingers flew over the keys, the words pouring out of him in a torrent of emotion. He poured his heart out onto the screen, his fears, his doubts, his anger, his grief. He demanded answers, demanded to know why he had been chosen, why he had been cursed with this loneliness. He begged for understanding, for mercy, for a way out of the darkness that consumed him. As he typed, he felt a sense of release, a catharsis that washed over him like a wave. He felt the weight lift from his shoulders, the pressure ease from his chest. He felt a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose. He was chosen, yes, but he was not alone. He had a purpose, a reason for his existence. He had a message to deliver, a truth to reveal. He hit send the message, disappearing into the void of the internet. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes closed, his breath slow and steady. He felt a sense of peace, a sense of acceptance. He was ready to face whatever came next, ready to embrace his destiny, ready to bring the message to the world. But even as he felt the peace wash over him, a small part of him wondered if he was making the right choice, wondered if he was strong enough to face the consequences of his actions. He pushed the thoughts away, refusing to let doubt creep in. He was chosen, and he would not falter. He would bring the message no matter the cost. He would bring the truth no matter the pain. He would bring the light no matter the darkness. He was Elias, the chosen one, and he would not be swayed. In the quietude of her dimly lit chamber, the weight of the parchment in her hands seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. The words, etched in an elegant, otherworldly script, pulsed with an eerie luminescence, casting dancing shadows upon the cold stone walls. Ilara, the chosen one, felt her heart pounding in her chest, like a drumbeat echoing the rhythm of her mounting dread. The air was thick with the scent of aged parchment and the faint underlying musk of the ancient castle, a scent that had become as familiar to her as her own breath. Her fingers trembled as she traced the words, the ink seeming to seep into her skin, a physical manifestation of the message's gravity. The parchment had appeared on her pillow that morning, as if delivered by unseen hands, and the sight of it had sent a shiver down her spine. The message was clear, its intent unmistakable, yet the implications were so vast, so terrifying, that she found herself struggling to comprehend them. "You are alone, Ilara." The message had begun the words seemingly carved into her very soul. "Not in the way you have come to know, not in the solitude of your chamber, or the emptiness of the great hall. You are alone in a way that transcends the physical, a way that resonates with the very essence of your being." The words had continued, each one a dagger to her heart, each one a truth she had long suspected but never dared to voice. You are alone because you are different. You are the chosen one, the one who stands between the light and the darkness, the one who bears the weight of the world upon her shoulders. You are alone because no one can truly understand the burden you carry, the fear that gnaws at your insides, the doubt that whispers in the quiet moments. Ilara's breath hitched as she recalled the words, her eyes burning with unshed tears. She had always known that her path was a solitary one, that the responsibilities bestowed upon her were not meant to be shared. But to see it laid out so plainly, to have her deepest fears and insecurities exposed in such a raw, unflinching manner, was more than she could bear. She looked around her chamber, the familiar sights and sounds offering little comfort. The flickering torchlight cast long dancing shadows, the flames crackling and popping in the silence. The scent of the ancient stones, the faint draft that whispered through the cracks in the walls, the creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath her feet. All of it was a testament to the passage of time, to the countless souls who had come and gone before her. Yet in that moment, she had never felt more isolated, more utterly alone. A soft knock at the door startled her, and she quickly tucked the parchment beneath her pillow, her heart pounding in her chest. She took a deep, steadying breath, wiping at her eyes before calling out, "Enter." The door creaked open, revealing the familiar face of her handmaiden, Lyra. The young woman's eyes were filled with concern, her brow furrowed as she took in Ilara's disheveled appearance. "My lady," she said, her voice soft and gentle. "Are you unwell?" Ilara forced a smile, her heart aching at the sight of Lyra's worried expression. "I am fine, Lyra. Just tired. It has been a long day." Lyra hesitated, her eyes searching Ilara's face, as if seeking the truth behind her words. "You have not eaten, my lady. I brought you some supper. It is not much, just some bread and cheese, but it will sustain you." Ilara's stomach rumbled at the mention of food, and she realized that she had not eaten since breakfast. She nodded, her smile softening. "Thank you, Lyra. That is very kind of you." Lyra entered the room, carrying a wooden tray laden with a simple meal. She set it down on the small table beside Ilara's bed, her movements careful and deliberate. As she did so, her eyes fell upon the parchment peeking out from beneath the pillow, and she paused, her expression unreadable. Ilara's heart skipped a beat, and she quickly reached out to tuck the parchment away, her fingers brushing against the rough, aged paper. "It is nothing, Lyra. Just a message." Lyra's eyes met Ilara's, and for a moment the two women simply stared at one another, a silent understanding passing between them. Lyra nodded, her expression softening. "Of course, my lady. I will leave you to your meal." As Lyra turned to leave, Ilara reached out and grasped her hand, her fingers trembling. "Lyra, wait." The young woman turned back, her eyes filled with concern. Yes, my lady? Alara took a deep, shuddering breath, her heart aching with the weight of her words. Thank you, Lara, for everything, for your kindness, your loyalty, your friendship. I do not know what I would do without you. Lyra's eyes welled with tears, and she squeezed Alara's hand, her grip strong and reassuring. You will never have to find out, my lady. I am here for you always. Alara nodded, her vision blurring with tears. She released Lyra's hand, her fingers brushing against the young woman's cheek in a gesture of gratitude and affection. Thank you, Lyra. That means more to me than you can know. As Lyra left the room, closing the door softly behind her, Alara turned her attention back to the tray of food. The scent of the fresh bread and cheese was comforting, a reminder of the simple pleasures in life that she so often overlooked in her quest to fulfill her destiny. She took a bite, the flavors exploding on her tongue, and for a moment she allowed herself to forget the weight of her responsibilities, the fear that gnawed at her insides, the doubt that whispered in the quiet moments. But as the meal drew to a close, so too did her brief respite from the reality of her situation. The parchment beneath her pillow seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a constant reminder of the message it contained, the truth it had laid bare. She reached out her fingers, brushing against the rough, aged paper, and she knew that she could no longer ignore the words that had been etched into her very soul. She took a deep, steadying breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she pulled the parchment from beneath the pillow. The words seemed to leap off the page, their meaning more clear, more urgent than ever before. You are alone, Alara, they seemed to whisper, but you are not without hope, for you are the chosen one, the one who stands between the light and the darkness, the one who bears the weight of the world upon her shoulders. And though the path before you is fraught with peril, though the burden you carry is heavy, you are not alone in your struggle. For there are those who believe in you, who stand beside you, who will fight for you. And together, you will face the darkness, and you will prevail. Alara's eyes burned with tears as she read the words, her heart swelling with a renewed sense of purpose, of determination. She knew that the path before her would not be easy, that the challenges she would face would test her in ways she could not yet imagine. But she also knew that she was not alone, that she had the strength, the courage, the resolve to face whatever lay ahead. She folded the parchment, carefully tucking it into the pocket of her robe. The weight of it was a comfort, a reminder of the message it contained, the truth it had laid bare. She took a deep, steadying breath, her heart pounding in her chest as she stood her resolve, firm, her determination unwavering. She was the chosen one, and she would not falter. She would face the darkness, and she would prevail. And she would do so with the knowledge that she was not alone, that she had the love and support of those who believed in her, who stood beside her, who would fight for her. With that thought in her heart, she stepped out of her chamber, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the ancient castle. The torchlight flickered, casting long dancing shadows upon the cold stone walls and the scent of the ancient stones, the faint draft that whispered through the cracks in the walls, the creak of the old wooden floorboards beneath her feet. All of it was a testament to the passage of time, to the countless souls who had come and gone before her. And as she walked, she knew that she was a part of that legacy, that she was a part of something greater than herself, something that would endure long after she was gone. She was the chosen one, and she would not falter. She would face the darkness, and she would prevail. And she would do so with the knowledge that she was not alone, that she had the love and support of those who believed in her, who stood beside her, who would fight for her. And with that thought in her heart, she stepped forward, her footsteps echoing in the silence of the ancient castle, her heart pounding with the rhythm of her determination, her resolve, her unwavering belief in the power of love, of hope, of the light that would guide her through the darkness. In the quietude of her chamber, the air thick with the scent of aged parchment and beeswax candles. Alara's fingers trembled as they traced the edges of the parchment. The words inked in a hand she did not recognize seemed to writhe and twist under her gaze, their meaning both clear and confounding. The room, once a sanctuary of solitude, now felt like the walls of a tomb closing in the weight of the message pressing down upon her like a physical force. Her breath hitched a sharp staccato rhythm that echoed the pounding of her heart. The words, "the real reason you are alone," had burrowed into her mind, their implications a serpent coiling around her thoughts. She could feel the heat of the candle's flame a mere inch from her hand, its flickering light casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock her solitude. The warmth did little to dispel the chill that had settled in her bones, a cold that seeped from the very core of her being. Alara's eyes, wide and luminous in the candlelight, scanned the parchment once more, as if the words might rearrange themselves into a less damning message. But they remained steadfast, their meaning unyielding. She was alone. The message proclaimed, not by chance, not by circumstance, but by design. A design orchestrated by the divine, a cruel jest played out on the stage of her life. A bitter laugh escaped her lips, a harsh, discordant sound that echoed through the chamber. She could taste the salt of her tears, the metallic tang of her fear. Her hands, once steady and sure, now shook like autumn leaves in a tempest. She felt the rough texture of the parchment under her fingertips, the raised ridges of the ink, a stark contrast to the smooth, unyielding surface of the truth it bore. The room seemed to spin around her, the shadows stretching and contorting their forms, twisted and grotesque. She could feel the coolness of the stone floor beneath her feet, a stark reminder of the reality she was grappling with. The scent of the candles, once comforting, now seemed cloying, their sweetness a mockery of the bitterness that filled her heart. Alara's mind raced a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions that threatened to overwhelm her. She thought of the countless nights she had spent in this very room, her heart aching with a longing she could not name. She thought of the countless days she had spent in the company of others, her laughter ringing out her smile, bright and genuine. And yet, despite it all, she had always felt a gnawing emptiness, a chasm that yawned wide and deep within her. The message on the parchment was a mirror held up to her soul, reflecting back at her the truth she had always known, but never dared to voice. She was alone, not by chance, not by circumstance, but by design. A design orchestrated by the divine, a cruel jest played out on the stage of her life. A sob escaped her lips, a raw, primal sound that echoed through the chamber. She felt the tears streaming down her cheeks, hot and wet, a stark contrast to the coldness that had settled in her heart. She felt the weight of her loneliness, a physical force that pressed down upon her, threatening to crush her beneath its immense weight. And yet, amidst the storm of her emotions, a spark of defiance flickered to life within her. She was alone, yes, but she was not powerless. She was not a pawn in some divine game, a mere plaything to be toyed with and discarded. She was Alara, the chosen one, and she would not go down without a fight. With a strength born of desperation, she wiped the tears from her eyes and straightened her back. She would not let this message define her, would not let it dictate the course of her life. She would find the truth, would unravel the mystery behind her loneliness, and she would do it on her own terms. The candlelight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows on the walls of her chamber. The scent of the beeswax filled her nostrils, a comforting, familiar scent that grounded her in the present. She could feel the rough texture of the parchment under her fingertips, a tangible reminder of the journey that lay ahead. And so, with a heart heavy with sorrow, but unyielding in its resolve, Alara took the first step on her quest for the truth. She would not let the message on the parchment be the end of her story. She would not let it be the reason she was alone. She would find the truth, would unravel the mystery behind her loneliness. and she would do it on her own terms. And in doing so, she would reclaim her life, her destiny, and her soul. In the quietude of her chamber, the air thick with the scent of aged parchment and beeswax candles, Alara sat huddled in her high-backed chair, the parchment clutched in her trembling hands. The fire crackled and popped in the hearth, casting dancing shadows that seemed to whisper secrets in the flickering light. Her heart pounded a staccato rhythm against her ribs, each beat echoing in her ears like a drum roll heralding some great, inexorable event. The words on the page swam before her eyes, blurring and refocusing as she reread the message, her breath hitching in her throat. The parchment, delivered by a hooded figure who had vanished into the night as swiftly as he had appeared, bore the seal of the High Priestess. The wax, a deep crimson, had been imprinted with the symbol of the divine serpent, its coils wrapping around a crescent moon. The sight of it sent a shiver down Alara's spine, a cold dread coiling in the pit of her stomach. She had known even before breaking the seal that this message was not merely an invitation or a request. It was a summons, a call to destiny that she could not ignore. Her fingers traced the elegant script, the ink still slightly damp, as if the words had been written mere moments ago, though she knew they had been penned days hence. The message was simple, yet laden with portent. Alara, chosen one, the time has come. The gods whisper your name in the sacred groves, and the stars align in your favor. You are beckoned to the temple of the divine serpent, where the high priestess awaits. Come and learn the truth of your solitude. Come and embrace your destiny. Do not tarry, for the path of the chosen is fraught with peril, and the night is fleeting. The words seemed to burn into her very soul, searing her with their urgency. She could feel the weight of their meaning pressing down upon her, a physical force that made it difficult to breathe. The room seemed to spin around her, the walls closing in as the reality of her situation crashed upon her like a tidal wave. Alara had always known she was different. From the time she was a child, she had felt a profound sense of isolation, a gulf between herself and the world that she could not bridge. The other children had shunned her, their laughter and games a distant foreign thing that she could never quite join. Even her own family had treated her with a mixture of awe and trepidation, as if she were a fragile artifact to be handled with care and kept at arm's length. As she grew older, the sense of isolation had only deepened. She had sought solace in books and the quiet companionship of the written word, but even there, she found no true respite. The stories she read were filled with heroes and heroines, their lives intertwined with the lives of others, their fates bound up in the tapestry of human connection. Alara, on the other hand, was alone, truly, utterly alone. She had often wondered why. Why had the gods chosen her for this path? What purpose could there be in her solitude? The questions had gnawed at her, keeping her awake at night, their echoes resounding through the empty chambers of her heart. And now at last, she had her answer, or rather, the promise of an answer. The thought filled her with a tumult of emotions. Fear, yes, but also a strange, exhilarating sense of anticipation. For the first time in her life, she felt as if she were standing on the precipice of something momentous, something that would change the course of her life forever. She could feel the pull of destiny, a tangible force that tugged at her very essence, urging her forward toward the unknown. She closed her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. The scent of the parchment filled her nostrils, a musky, earthy aroma that grounded her, anchoring her in the present moment. She could feel the rough texture of the paper beneath her fingertips, the slight give of the fibers as she traced the words once more. And then, with a suddenness that took her breath away, she knew what she must do. She would go to the temple of the divine serpent. She would seek out the high priestess and learn the truth of her solitude. She would embrace her destiny, whatever it may be. The decision brought with it a sense of resolve, a steely determination, that banished the last vestiges of fear. She opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fire. The shadows danced and writhed, their forms shifting and changing, as if the very air around her was alive with possibility. She rose from her chair, the parchment still clutched in her hand. The firelight cast long, dramatic shadows across her face, highlighting the sharp angles of her cheekbones and the determined set of her jaw. She was no longer the solitary figure she had once been, the isolated soul adrift in a sea of humanity. She was Alara, the chosen one, and she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As she moved through the chamber, her footsteps echoed softly on the stone floor, a steady rhythmic sound that seemed to echo the beating of her heart. She could feel the weight of the parchment in her hand, a physical manifestation of the burden she had carried for so long. But now, at last, she was ready to set that burden down. She was ready to learn the truth. She reached the door of her chamber and paused, her hand hovering over the latch. For a moment, she allowed herself to savor the quiet, the stillness that had been her constant companion for so long. She knew that when she stepped beyond this door, her life would change irrevocably. She would leave behind the solitude that had defined her, the isolation that had shaped her very being. But she was ready. She was ready to embrace the unknown, to step into the light and leave the shadows behind. She was ready to learn the truth of her solitude, to uncover the purpose behind her isolation. She was ready to become the chosen one, in truth as well as in name. With a deep, steadying breath, she pushed open the door and stepped out into the night. The cool air washed over her, a stark contrast to the warmth of the chamber she had left behind. The stars above were bright and myriad, their light casting a silver glow over the world below. She could feel the weight of their gaze, the silent witness of their ancient, unblinking eyes. She began to walk her steps sure and steady, her heart pounding in her chest like a drumbeat. She did not know what lay ahead, did not know what trials and tribulations awaited her on the path to the temple of the divine serpent. But she knew that she was ready to face them. She was ready to embrace her destiny, whatever it may be. And so, with the stars as her guide and the parchment clutched tightly in her hand, Alara, the chosen one, stepped out into the night, her heart filled with a mixture of fear and exhilaration, her soul alight with the fire of destiny. The world around her seemed to hold its breath, the very air humming with anticipation as she took her first steps toward the unknown. The journey to the temple was long and arduous, the path winding through